live in a day and age where I think a lot of people assume that the ideal workplace is one where everyone's always focused, where they're in their cubicles looking at their computer screen. And what you discover when you look at how creativity actually happens in the real world and how the brain generates moments of insight and our best ideas is that they often come from random conversations around the water cooler. They come when we are most relaxed. That's why being drunk can increase creative problem solving by 30%. They come when we're daydreaming. They come when we're in the shower. So I think it's about realizing you have to give your employees what scientists call attentional freedom. Let them sometimes, of course you want them to be focused for most of the day, but every once in a while they're going to hit the wall. They're going to get stuck and stumped. That's when they need to have a moment of insight. And that's when it's most helpful to actually not be at work, to look like you're wasting your time. There's a wonderful line of Einstein's that creativity is the residue of wasted time. So I think workplaces, regardless of what kind of workplace it is, have to be more willing to let their employees waste some time. There are all sorts of different phases throughout the creative process. So one part of the phase will involve just putting in the work and you feel like you're making progress, you feel like you're slowly unconcealing the problem. But then what often happens is you're working on it, and then you hit the wall, right? You just feel stuck and stumped, you have no idea what to do next. And that's when you need a moment of insight. That's when you need a big breakthrough. And then the question becomes, how do you get those breakthroughs? And I think we're pretty good at figuring out how to work harder and longer. It's why there's a Starbucks in every corner at this point. We all know how to stay focused, or at least, we try to stay focused. What I think we're not good at encouraging or inspiring is what happens when we're stuck and stumped. I think most people assume when you're stuck and stumped that you need to just focus even harder, when that's the exact wrong thing to do. For me, one thing that's been important is learning to leave my phone behind. When I go on a walk, I want it to be a daydreaming walk. I think in this day and age, it's so tough to be usefully bored. As soon as we get bored, we just check our phones, right? We check our email, we check Twitter, and so on. When I think really boredom can be a great precursor to a good daydream. It's not an accident that people who daydream more score much higher on tests of creativity. So I think we need to learn, or at least relearn, how to productively daydream. Brainstorming is a technique pioneered by Alex Osborne in the late 1940s. And there are just two simple rules to classic brainstorming. The first rule is, don't criticize. All ideas are good ideas. Just throw them out. Second rule is, it's all about quantity, not quality. That comes later. And this makes some intuitive sense, right? I think because we all believe the imagination is meek and shy and fragile. So if it's a word about being criticized, it'll just clam up and you won't be able to free associate. Unfortunately, study after study has shown over the last 60 years that brainstorming doesn't work. The people who brainstorm in a group actually come up with fewer ideas than people who work by themselves on those same problems. And the reason brainstorming doesn't work returns us to the very first rule, which is thou shalt not criticize. Because it turns out that groups that engage in criticism, what psychologists call debate and dissent, come up with far more ideas, around 25% more ideas, and those ideas are seen as more original. And that's because when we just brainstorm, when there is no criticism, we tend to stay on the superficial surface of the imagination. We're not forced to dig deeper. And it's criticism that helps us do that. Being in a group that is debating and dissenting from each other, that's invigorating, it wakes us up, it means we're fully engaged, we're actually listening to what other people are saying, right? And that's the point of being in a group after all. And that's when we get somewhere interesting, right? When we dig below the superficial surface. So, of course, you can't work in an office where people are just always going at it, So I don't think we've got a great model yet for how to take what we know in the lab, where it's just students coming together once and moving that idea to a real workplace. So I think companies have to innovate on innovation here. They've got to realize we've got to come up with a better way than brainstorming, because we know brainstorming doesn't work. And we've got some hints about how to make it work better. But I think that's what we're going to have to discover for ourselves in the next few years.